In a court of law, witness testimony is considered a valid form of evidence. Unfortunately, we are also in a society that puts the burden of evidence on the very individual who has oftentimes experienced something shocking or traumatic. For decades, many have disregarded testimony and proof of UFO exposures. Perhaps it is too shocking for the person hearing the testimony. Nonetheless, the US now acknowledges that UFOs or UAP are a real concern. It is time to hear from the people who encountered them. With the voices of experiencers, perhaps we can prepare the medical and psychological fields to prepare for best treatment and practices. After all, more and more will be coming forward, tired of being disregarded and mistreated, misdiagnosed, and not heard. I thank them for their bravery. And the first person coming forward today to talk to the UAP Medical Coalition is one of those brave individuals. Among people who know her, she is called Jules often. Her full name is Julie Farrell. Thank you so much for coming and talking today with the UAP Medical Coalition.
Thank you for having me.
So I have a set of questions that I'm going to ask experiencers who want to come forward. We're not going to go too far off of them because I know it's a lot to have to come out and talk about these things. It can be difficult for some people. So the first question is if you would like to share in general terms what your experience with a UAP or UFO was.
When I was a young child in the 70s, um, I saw a bubble craft. It looked like a soap bubble in the air with a light suspended in the middle of it, a white light. And we were in the car, my brother, my mom, and I, and going to the grocery store. And when we get to the grocery store, I'm watching it in the sky thinking, oh, this is a pretty little bubble, everything, because I wasn't very old, because I know I was riding in the cart still. But we get to the grocery store and it's over the grocery store parking lot, like maybe 100 feet in the air. And it's the size of a bus, but, completely around, circular, and still has this bright white light suspended in it that doesn't hurt the eyes or anything. And I was just feeling like, oh, this is beautiful and how nice and everything. And then a window opened in it that was rectangular, and I could see people in there, and they were people. They were like, I always called them the Barbie people because they were so pretty. And it was two blonde men with long blonde hair and tight fitting silver uniforms, silvery blue, but it was a tight material that I wasn't used to seeing. It was like before the disco days, but it was like disco material, kind of satiny kind of. And two women, one blonde and one dark, more like me, olive complected, and she had long black straight hair. And they waved at me and I waved at them. And I don't know how long we were out there or anything, but after they waved at me and I waved back, my mom was just like, well, it's time to go into the store. And so we went in the store. I was a little kid. I had no say in the matter, but I remember not wanting to leave. And that was my first encounter with UAP type entities and craft. Since then, I have had I had one with my first husband. Well, when I was married to him, it was the too bright light kind, and I saw it coming up like there's we were living in a cabin on a hill on 86 acres. And so nobody's up there, right? And there was like a line cut, for the wires by the house. And these lights were coming up that line. And it was like, and I thought that there was a car or something coming up the line in the middle of the night. And I even called my neighbor and said, hey, I think there's somebody, in a truck or something coming up the wire line. And he's like, no, you must be imagining things. There couldn't be a truck there and stuff like that. And he didn't want to come and help me. It was, the middle of the night. But that was an odd experience. And then I was driving with my husband. He was in a terrible car accident, and so he had brain damage, and I was his caretaker. And we were riding home one day on the road, and I see these same kind of two bright lights, and I'm thinking it's a helicopter or something flying, in the field next to the road. And it started coming at us, and I remember being blinded by it, and then it was just gone. And we're driving down the road, and David Lee, that was my first husband, he and I were talking about weird things, because he thought he thought it was weird too. We knew we had just seen these weird lights. And I said, yeah. And there are people who say that when they go under like street lights, that they go out. And I said, just like poof, and the street light ahead of us went out. And he said, do it again, do it again. And I said, and they go out like poof, and the next one went out. And then I said, this is weird. and I tried to do it again after that, and it didn't work. But that was very strange. And I can't say we had missing time or anything, because I really wasn't paying attention to it. But then again, after my first husband passed away, I remarried, and my husband currently and I were at home. We live on 9 acres in an RV, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I don't sleep well. And I'm up, and I see this pulsing, like breathing white light down in the bottom of our woods, because we live on the hilltop and our property goes down. And so I wake him up and tell him, there's somebody down in the bottom, and come look at this light, because I could see it out the front of the RV. And it's just going woo, 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 woo. And and we're the first thing that came to our minds is there's somebody doing something down there that they aren't supposed to, or somebody needs help. They something crashed, something weird's going on. So he puts on an oversuit, because it was winter, and takes a gun and starts to head down there to see what's going on. And he didn't come back for a long time, and he'll tell you he was only gone 15 minutes, but he was gone for more like an hour or so. And it's his experience, so I'm kind of hesitant to even say it, but he, when he got down there towards it, he never got up to the place it was, because he fell in a hole. And then he heard clicking and trilling on behind him and off to the side of him. And it freaked him out so bad. Even though he had a gun, he's like, they're flanking me. And he said he got that hair standing up on his neck feeling and everything. And he just came back up to the house. But again, he thinks he was gone like 15 minutes. And I say he was gone at least an hour. And we never went back out there that night, because I'm like, well, don't go back, if something scared him, I didn't want him going down there again. But that was the most recent one. That was only in like 2014, something like that, 2013, 2014. And a couple nights after that happened, we were outside, and we had like a fire going, because like I said, it was winter. And I'm not sure what time it was, but he came around the side of the RV and said, Julie, what's this light? And up in the sky was a blue, it looked like a search beam, but it wasn't coming from the ground. It was, what is it called? Is it parallel when it's to the earth like this? Because it was going
Vertical.
around like this, and you could tell, yeah, it wasn't pointing at the ground. It was going straight through the sky, like if we were inside a radar thing, underneath the radar, beam, and it was blue. And it took it like a half a minute to go around where we could see it, and then it would be disappeared for the half a minute it took to cover wherever else it was going, and then it was coming around again, and it was out there for a long time. And then all of a sudden it sucked into itself and darted off to towards the Gulf, because I live down by the Gulf of Mexico, and it went that way. And I said, it's gone. And he's like, oh, I didn't, it is gone. He didn't see it leave. And then, we're still out there for a few minutes, and it came back and started going around again. And after a while, I mean, it was just cold out there and everything, and it was just going around, and we didn't know what it was. And we were like, oh, blue beam of light, do what you're doing. But, in retrospect, I kind of felt like I was getting the message they were hunting for whoever had been in the woods a couple days earlier, and I know that sounds bizarre, but that's the impression that I got psychically was, we're here looking for them. And I don't know if they found them or not, but that's pretty much most of my craft
Well, you've had
experiences
several.
that I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask next if in any of those incidents you had any physical effects that you felt were related, or medical effects that you felt might be related.
Well, as a kid, I was diagnosed with chronic conjunctivitis. My eyes would swell a lot, and I was, they'd say it looks like you were burned with a welder's torch or something, and have that kind of stuff. I mean, I had 13 surgeries on my eyes because they were trying to fix tear ducts that didn't need fixing. And I really think that ever since I was little, little, like maybe even from birth, I've been in contact, and that's why I always had such eye problems. And I also have a lot of autoimmune like illnesses, but I never have markers for autoimmune illness, even though my sister has like lupus and stuff like that. And I know that that's something that a lot of experiencers go through, is autoimmune illnesses. And I've been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, or myalgic encephalomyelitis. And I think that's something that a lot of experiencers go through too, and they don't know really the cause of that yet. And yeah, I do believe that I have had physical effects from it, but I can't pin it to like, oh, I saw this light and then I had a sunburn or whatever. I don't remember anything that specific happening, but I do think that it's part of what has gone on in mine and my mom's life, because my mom had a lot of strange illnesses too, and she also had a lot of paranormal stuff, and she was with me on that first one. But unfortunately, she died quite young. But so I couldn't talk to her after I started, finding other people that have experienced this stuff. She always just said, Julie, we don't talk about these things, all the
Mm.
weird things in our lives. We don't talk. And she was very religious, because she was dying from the time I was born,
Mhm.
and they didn't expect her to live long at all. So she was like seeking in the religious realm, and she found a faith that thought that kind of stuff was demons, and so she didn't want to discuss it. And whenever I would come to her with something of the paranormal variety, which I've had a lot, not just UAP, that it was something that we didn't discuss with other people, you know,
It was
and
actually one
that's
of my
that's
yeah, it was one of my questions to ask about the effect on you and your family and the people that you knew to have had a encounter with a UAP.
yeah. And my brother, who is still alive to this day, all he'll say about it is, yeah, we saw something. He's like 4 years older than me, so he probably, well, you never know because people remember different things from these things. But the times I've tried to talk to him about it, the grocery store event, he's just like, yeah, we saw something, but I don't know what it was. And then he just changes the subject. He doesn't want to talk about it. And I don't know. I really think it pushed our family apart a bit, which I know it often does. That and other things in life, but it just there always were so many things that we weren't supposed to talk about, and that makes it hard. It almost felt like weren't we were just people who lived in a house together. It wasn't exactly like family. And and that hurts a family.
Yes, absolutely. So did you ever seek professional help while discussing the fact that some of these issues may have been related to UAP?
Well, the one time I have seen a psychiatrist in the past in my 20s, but it wasn't because of UAP. It was because I was sick and having secondary depression from chronic illness, right? But I did try to bring up some of the stuff, and he didn't seem he said, yeah, people say these things, and then he tried to put me on lithium. So I don't think he really had a grasp of what I was going through if you just wanted to zombie me out about it. And I haven't spoken to any mental health professionals about being an experiencer because quite frankly, I'm kind of scared to. Even now, I mean, most of them do not take it as a reality yet. And that's why I wanted to help UAP Med, because there need to be doctors for people like me, and people who've had it so much worse, because fortunately I've not had a lot of really horrifying experiences. I've had things that were scary, but over time as I stood back and looked back on them, I'm like, yeah, I was scared, but it wasn't because they were hurting me, it was because it freaked me out. And in that way I feel blessed. But I really am hoping that UAP Med can help educate the medical field about this subject.
Well, thank you, first of all, for sharing all of that. That's quite brave, again, to come forward and to share your experiences. I'm sure other people hearing what you have had to say can relate and will hopefully feel more comfort in knowing that they're not the only one going through the experience. My last question for you today is just what would you have found beneficial to help you through all of this from your providers, including your medical provider?
Oh, geez. It would be lovely if you could feel like you could talk honestly about things like this with them, because I mean, I'm 56, and back in my day you did not tell a doctor these things unless you wanted to be put away, you know and that and nobody even spoke publicly about there being health effects. I had no idea that some of the things I was experiencing with my health could have been caused from my contact with the anomalous. I had no idea until just recently. And I think more people need to know that so that they will talk about it. And doctors need to be open to the fact that it can affect people and that they aren't, they're not crazy. You don't need to put them on drugs because they've seen things like this, that the vast majority of us are quite sane and just have experienced something that most people don't. And I really wish that would have helped me. It would have helped me to have known that sooner and to know of doctors that would not treat you as if you are crazy. And if that had happened when I was young, that could have changed a lot of the course of my life, I think, because I know that, well, in my 20s, I spent a lot of that time on heavy antidepressants and drugs for like nerves, like Ativan and stuff like that, probably a decade until I finally said, this stuff's not helping me, and got taken off of all of it. And I don't take any of that stuff now. And I feel like I do better, not worse, without all that kind of heavy psych medication. And it would be really nice if there was just more public knowledge of the fact that things do affect you physically, and they do affect your mental, you know they don't make you crazy, but they do affect how you see reality. You see reality differently after you've seen something that's not supposed to exist. You do. And but that doesn't mean that you're crazy. It just means that you've seen some things that challenge what most people think. And that's pretty much it for that.
Well, thank you again. I think you have put out some really important information for someone listening. I really hope that people heed what you have said, and that people do make the effort to go and find out the information about the medical and psychological effects. And it's again, thank you so much. You're so brave, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you. And if you like, you can tell people where they can find you. It's up to you.
I'm on UFO Twitter at Jules of the Wood, and it's spelled JULESOFTHWOOD because I had a typo and I never removed it. So you leave the E out on the. But and that's pretty much where you find me. And I'm also in a lot of chats, like I'm the moderator for Cabbies, and I'm on Spaced Out Radio's chat. I'm a moderator. But the easiest place to find me is on UFO Twitter at Jules of the Wood. I'm also on Facebook under Julie Farrell, and that's me.
Well, thank you so much, Ed, for those listening. Thank you for listening. I'm hoping we'll have more brave people coming out and talking about their experiences so we can educate medical and mental health professionals. Thank you again.